And welcome to the BIAV Advocacy webinar series. My name is Ann McDonald, and I'm sort of the advocate-in-chief for BIAV. What I'm hoping is over the course of the next 6 webinars that you'll feel more comfortable and confident when it comes to advocating for what we need for folks with brain injuries in the state of Virginia, because we can't do it without your voice. So let's get started. I love this quote by Ann Landers because it says, the trouble with opportunity is that it always comes disguised as hard work. Well, we have lots of opportunities for advocacy, and it's really hard work. What we know is that advocacy does help people solve problems, and it can make people stronger, and it can help the organizations that engage in advocacy activities meet the needs of their clients better. We know that advocacy can help prepare people for future efforts that may even have a greater impact than what we're working on right now. Once we get better at advocacy, then changes to healthcare and the number of supports that we're able to access and public policies that change the future for people with brain injuries are possible because we get better at this. And we get better at it because we believe that everybody can advocate for something, and that's true. The more people that we have involved, the more state and local and federal laws can support the independence of people with brain injuries and their families in their homes and communities. And I am quite confident that everyone watching and listening to this webinar can learn the skills that they need to participate in policy-making processes. We can make sure that your voice is heard and that state legislators and other policymakers know what an impact their actions might have on folks with brain injuries. Their actions can be positive or negative, and they'll never know the difference unless we start talking to them. You know, advocacy is one of these things that you have to learn about in order to do. So you have to learn the process and you have to prepare to play. And through the course of these webinar series, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what exactly is lobbying and what isn't lobbying, but is advocacy. We're going to talk about how the General Assembly in Virginia works. We're going to talk about how bills and budget amendments are created and passed into law. We're going to find out who are the money people that we need to be talking to and who else in the General Assembly believes in our cause and who will fight our battles with us. We're going to talk about data that we might need and who's got it and how we're going to use that data to improve the system of care for folks with brain injuries. And we're going to talk about the problems that we need to do, the problems that we need to address. This is a graph that's always meant something to me when I've looked at it, because what I know is that data drives policy, drives funding, drives services. When we have more data about the needs of people with brain injuries, that data can help us drive policy changes that may increase access to care and increase the supports that are available. Sometimes those policy changes lead to funding that allows programs to grow and to take people off their waiting lists. And we know that when that happens, people get services that then give us more data about the things that they need and the things that we might do to change the future for them. Listen, I know that politics is not a fun space to be in right now, and it can be really overwhelming, but that doesn't mean that we can't keep fighting our battles. And the way that we do that and the way that we make it a little less overwhelming is that we prepare. You know, we're going to figure out what it is that we want as a community to improve the system of care for people we care about. We're going to understand the issues and the politics behind it, and we're going to see what we can do to be better prepared for the conversations that we're going to have with elected and appointed policymakers. We're going to teach. We're going to talk about the stories that we want told, and we're going to talk about how we tell those stories. And BIAV is going to help you create materials, and we're going to offer hands-on assistance that will make this easier for you. You have to inspire. BIAV has to inspire. We believe, and we have to instill in everybody a belief that they can make change happen. And you have to be excited about it and create a desire in others to join our efforts Talk to the people that you care about. Writing a letter to a legislator is really easier than you think, and we're going to talk about that in one of the webinars a little later on down the road. And you have to stick with it. You have to sort of follow politics and know who the players are and what the general sense of a topic is in the General Assembly or in the general public. You have to remember that politics is a long haul game, and changing the things that we want to change to make life better for people with brain injuries is going to take time and effort. And it's going to keep requiring folks to fight after it seems like the battle is lost. We've been trying in Virginia to get a brain injury waiver for some 15 years, and I am still not ready to give up that fight. I hope you feel the same way. When our advocacy efforts are successful, great things can happen. So even though it's overwhelming, progress can be made. We have about $5 million in state funding for non-home and community-based waiver services that are based in the community for people with brain injury. Those programs include resource coordination, case management, and clubhouses and day programs. We've been able to get legislative and health commission studies ordered that look at the access to services in Virginia for people with brain injuries. We've been able to pass a sports concussion bill, also known as the Return to Play bill. And then we were able to get return to learn laws passed to make sure that every child returning to a classroom after a concussion or more serious brain injury is properly supported to have some success in the classroom. We were able in this past General Assembly to pass a bill that required first responders to learn something about brain injury so that law enforcement officers and crisis intervention teams can figure out how they can best respond in situations when someone has a brain injury. And we've also passed bills that increase the access to crisis care and substance use disorder programs for people with brain injury. This is a picture of the rally that we had at the General Assembly earlier this year in 2020. We had people with brain injuries, we had family members, we had the folks that work at some of the community-based brain injury programs across the state. We had students from the pharmacy school at VCU and a number of others come down and participate in our General Assembly Brain Injury Awareness Day. We had people go around the building and meet with legislators and talk to them about the items that we were trying to get passed and the funding that we wanted to see to support this community. And we were successful. We were able to get $1 million in new money to invest in workforce retention. One of the things that we know is that all of our programs are struggling to pay a wage that's comparable to others in their area. We know that we're losing qualified and well-trained staff to other jobs where the pay might be a little bit higher or the benefits might be a little bit bigger. For the last 10 years, all new money that's been invested in brain injury services have required us to develop new programs. Well, the costs keep going up for all of those programs, and we need some money that was just going to allow us to invest in the workforce. Sadly, as a result of COVID, we're not going to see that money, but we're still counting this as a victory, and we're going to build on it for the 2021 session. We were also able to get a couple of bills passed. We got a driver's license identification bill passed. It will allow somebody to voluntarily identify themselves as having a brain injury on their driver's license. And as I mentioned earlier, we were able to get a requirement that first responders and crisis intervention teams got some training in brain injury. This is a chart that shows our progress over the years. So when you see that we started this back in 1989, and until 2004, we'd only gotten just a little over $1 million. But as of fiscal year 2020, we've made it to $5 million through the work of people just like you. And that has greatly expanded the continuum of care for people with brain injuries in Virginia. And over here on the other side, you'll see a number of bills and studies and things that we've been able to get passed to improve how the state responds to people with brain injuries. In part 2 of this series, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between advocacy and lobbying so that you feel a little bit better about the things that you're doing. So I hope you join us for part 2, and thanks for listening.